Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Hello/X/. As the title might have clued you in, I am what people throughout the years have come to call a vampire. I am here to offer all of you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. To keep things simple, you ask questions about me or about the subject at hand, and I will answer them. But first, I find it necessary that I lay out some information. What are vampires? The most proper name for the species is strigoi. They are beings that were once normal humans but were cursed. There are three kinds of strigoi. Strigoi mort, SM, that die and rise from their graves. They served as the most informative basis for what most people think of when it comes to vampires. Strigoi viu, SV, those who are cursed by witches or demons with vampirism but still retain a level of humanity. Those who are cursed can choose to fight or embrace the curse, but regardless, there is no known cure for it. Half strigoi, HS, often called dumpirs in fiction. They are the children of strigoi with normal humans and are an extreme rarity. What is vampirism? How does it work? How does a person become a vampire? Vampirism is a curse that is either forced upon someone by being cursed or by willingly partaking in a demonic covenant to become one. It is certain that those who willingly choose to become strigoi by dark covenant will rise from their deaths as true strigoi, the image of the vampire. All strigoi must feed on blood in some capacity in order to survive and maintain some sense of stability, regardless of what kind or type they may be. All strigoi have a thirst and appetite for blood. Alongside this, all strigoi possess strong teeth with several that tend to appear pointier than most, giving them a stronger bite. Even if you are a strigoi viu, if you choose to drink sinful human blood will become more and more demonic in nature. Those who feed on animal blood will become more like the animals as well. The best course of action for strigoi who wish to avoid being demonic and retain more humanity within themselves is by drinking human blood, a pure and nourishing source that can truly help us. As mentioned before, to become a strigoi, a person must either be cursed or must willingly drink of a demonic covenant, a ritual that turns them into strigoi. What abilities or powers do vampires and strigoi possess? Strigoi do not age normally and do not die by old age. However, they aren't truly immortal, and they especially aren't invincible. Strigoi viu stop aging at whatever point the curse begins to take dominance over a certain portion of their physiology. Strigoi mort do not age because they have already died, and some even claim they can reverse the physical appearance of aging by feeding. Those who bear the curse will notice a difference between things that are just a part of their nature and abilities that are gained. For example, all strigoi possess heightened senses, though which senses and how can vary. But not all strigoi will have the same natural propensity towards certain traits. Some will find they have a new immense strength that is ever present, while others will have the same feeling yet for an unusual speed or maneuverability. I like to think of these as passives. This is the body's attempt to adapt to the natural instincts of the curse. A matured strigoi that engages in the dark covenant will grow and sharpen these senses at the cost of damnation and their humanity. It is also possible for strigoi who drink of the dark covenant and partake in its rituals to gain control over powers that are more mystical and even magical. This includes ones like manipulation of the elements, shape-shifting into nocturnal creatures. Some are not too dissimilar from the satanic powers that witches in covenant with the devil possess. While it is true that some powers are privy to the strigoi nature, they are very hard to have any direct conscious control over if a strigoi still clings to a semblance of humanity or virtue. A strigoi mort's power is strongest at night, especially at 3:33 a.m., due to it being an inversion of the time that Christ died on the cross. What about weaknesses? Strigoi do have weaknesses that can vary in effectiveness depending on the strigoi. Strigoi mort are weak to all things holy and Christ-like. The cross and crucifixes, holy water, holy imagery, chrism oil, blessed and consecrated items like sacramentals, relics of saints are very effective, and especially Benedictine items that ward off all things related to demons in some capacity. By far the thing that terrifies them the most is the sacred sacrament of the Eucharist. Strigoi view depend on whether they choose to embrace the curse or to not indulge in it. I would imagine the same goes for half strigoi, but I have never encountered one. Strigoi do not burn in the sun, but strigoi mort do not like being active in the day, and their powers are weaker during daytime as well. Regardless of type, all strigoi have a stronger concupiscence than that of regular humans due to the diabolical origin of the curse. So now that the formalities are out of the way, please feel free to ask anything that itches your curiosity.
Is your mother and father proud of you?
They have said they are at times, but I'm not sure what they would think if they knew. They have no idea what I am to my knowledge. Of course, part of me thinks they wouldn't believe me at all, but they're not stupid. I haven't aged or grown at all since I was 15 or 16, when the curse started to gain a level of influence over my body. I'm 20 now.
So you are a 20-year-old vampire?
Yeah, I was cursed when I was just a kid, but being a strigoi VU, I didn't start to experience any changes until pubescence. Tons of my classmates always wondered why I seemingly aged slower and had a sudden boost in hearing and physical speed, part of the passives I mentioned earlier. Well, to be quite honest, strigoi are so rare these days that encountering another one, especially in North America, is actually almost an event in and of itself.
I bet the other vampires are going to lock him in a crypt buried deep beneath the earth for all eternity for being a vampire incel.
It might actually surprise you, but vampires aren't really this powerful secret society like most media portrays now, especially the strigoi mort. They're much more like animals that just hunt and hide. Sometimes they even hibernate. The few of their sort that don't live like that tend to still be the types that don't like going out in public very often, except for one obvious reason.
Yeah, I bet you don't go out in public very often either.
I do a fair amount. I can enjoy the quiet just as well as I can enjoy a nice outing.
This thread started off strong but fell through very fast. But I'll bite. How did you become a strigoi? What ways can you prove you are one? Have you met anybody else who is a strigoi? If you are a strigoi view, like what I believe you said, what have you killed, how have you killed it, and do you have any proof of you killing it?
Ever since I was just a boy, I was terrorized by demons. They would try to destroy my faith. I have seen their forms, devoid of all light. I have heard their ungodly laughter. My parents do know about this. I was psychologically assessed, and after many examinations, it was reported there was nothing wrong with me. They continued to torment me until I declared out loud I would never give them what they want. Then, things started to get a little quieter. Years begin to pass where I can still feel like they watch me from time to time, but they're not acting the same way they used to. My being able to sense them should have told me what was really going on, but I was just a kid. How could I have known? As time went on, while the other kids around me were changing as expected, I didn't seem to change as quickly or dramatically as they did. Not visually at least, but in other ways I did. Some of my senses skyrocketed, in particular my hearing, sense of smell, and taste. I could suddenly outrun the most athletic boys at school. Of course I did grow, but it was slow, and by the time I was in high school it stopped. While others started to look more like adults, I still looked like an underclassman. Even today, some of my classmates from then tell me how shocked they are I haven't aged at all. As for killing, I assume you're talking about how I feed. As mentioned in the info section, I do have a natural urge to consume blood, but it can be suppressed. The most effective way for a strigoi view who rejects the darkness to be more human and avoid the demonic influence is the Eucharist, as it is the transubstantiated blood of Christ. I do this thrice weekly. This must be done at least semi-regularly, or else the urge will begin to grow and cloud the mind. If you're wondering what it feels like, it's most comparable to a feeling of intense lust, like a drug that is trying to control you to do something, even if you would never do it otherwise. As for other strigoi, yes, I have. It was at dusk. When I was a bit younger, I saw a woman who looked to be maybe in her 20s. She seemed to be away from most other people, dressed in dark clothing. Most people didn't seem to notice her, but I did, because she was looking right at me. Her pale eyes seemed to glow faintly. She stared right into mine. She gave a smile which would have seemed friendly if it didn't reveal teeth that looked like they could tear through my flesh. She even waved at me a little. I turned to look at my family to see if they noticed her too, but they were all just talking like normal. I immediately looked back. She was gone. To this day, I wonder if she was trying to communicate with me, and if it was somehow because she knew I was like her in a way.
Proof. That's what I thought.
There are many reports throughout history of the strigoi existing and interacting with humans. Their existence is more easily proven than any extraterrestrial life form could be. Even today, people report encounters with strigoi, in particular the strigoi mort. I'm sorry I can only provide you with my own personal anecdotes from my experiences, but the purpose of this thread isn't to persuade you of anything. I'm just offering you a chance to ask me whatever may interest you about the strigoi.
Oh, so no proof? Color me surprised.
You won't find what you don't look for. As I said, I can't magically convince you, and honestly I don't want to. Maybe it's best you don't encounter a strigoi. As elusive as they are in this age, most who do never live to speak of it.
Now, post-teeth, LARPer with timestamp.
I second this. Shit or get off the pot. Confirm bullshit until you show teeth. Jannies, do your job.
Sorry, got busy playing a game. This is the best I can do without giving away personal info or my location right now. The teeth aren't as exaggerated as a strigoi mort, but they're not the average canines.
2 different pictures edited together. That's not how you do a timestamp. You disingenuous. Insert slur here, Lil Mayo. I knew you would do this.
No need to use slurs. Also, like I said, I tried. And they're not really edited, I just put them next to each other. I'm sorry, but it was hard to get my teeth and the paper in the same frame without showing my face.
Then a Christmas miracle happened. The Jannies did their job for once and swept up the thread.
The /X/vampire. Fact or fiction? So yesterday I was browsing an archive to check out any posts that might be about any interesting stuff and came across this thread where a 20-year-old kid said he was a vampire and would answer questions people had about them. I thought at first he was just some Twilight tier LARPer, but when I read through his replies, it hit me that he might not have been lying. His info on vamps was all extremely accurate to actual folklore that they originate from. That aside, his story about meeting one really made me think he was maybe telling the truth. For context, I had an experience with a creepy-ass man I'm 100% certain was a real vampire, and the OP from this thread described a woman who seems eerily similar. I'm really not sure what to think.
I don't know, OP maybe. Sure, it's possible, but you have to consider the fact that there's a sizable number of youths who pretend to be supernatural creatures.
I saw this thread when it was up a couple days ago. Call me fucking crazy, but I'm led to believe he actually was. I've seen vampire threads before, and you can immediately tell if they're fake if they mention anything about burning in the sun or being turned by bite, which is certified bullshit made up by movies. Vampires didn't burn in the sun in fiction until Nosferatu came up with it. Same with biting. Pretty sure it first appeared in the Dracula movie with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Anyway, the ones that actually seem potentially legit, the OP lists things that are consistent with the actual stories and culture that they came from. Also, could you elaborate on your vampire story, OP? He could have just been a cosplayer goth or some shit.
It was when I was a sophomore in high school. It was late and I was hanging out with friends in a town that was about an hour away. We were eating outside, they got up to go piss, and I saw this creepy pale-ass motherfucker with glowing eyes walk by and stop to smile at me, showing his nasty, blood-covered teeth. I almost shat my pants then and there, but my friends came back, so they all asked me why I looked panicked. So I told them it was because of the creepy guy across the street, which they seemed confused about asking where. I turned around and he was gone, so I felt relieved, and after a moment of us throwing our trash away, we got up and left. The thing that really made me think he was a vampire was when we were walking back to the car. I saw this big bat flying around before it descended and landed on the ground. Something I've never seen a bat do before. Thankfully, we got on the road and went back home, but damn was I paranoid the whole drive.
Oh shit, that's nothing to laugh at. So you haven't had any experiences with one since then?
Not since then. No, but every time that I've been back to that town, I always make sure to leave before it gets dark. Not taking any chances, because most people who encounter them don't live to tell the tale.
Nah, they usually just hit good people in the back like a coward and then leave them for dead. Fun fact, the locked door of a vehicle is enough to disorient them enough that they get stuck in an autism loop like a deer in headlights. But we all know how this old song and dance is gonna go.
I don't know, man. I am a bookman. I once found a book of a Chinese man that claimed to have lived for almost 300 years. This is a famous book. Other non-famous book claims that extending life and live with vitality until old age of 120 years of age is that one needs to eat the meat of young animals. Guess what this thing is saying? And now we have some actors in Hollywood with very old pictures and photographs that resemble them very much. Now things have been released about the elite cult. Things are starting to get very strange, or reality is worse than what I want to believe.
Actually, the myth of not going under the sun started with some king or royal prince in Europe that suffered from porphyria and had lower hemoglobin levels. Hemoglobin is broken and decomposes under the sunlight, the same way with icteric kids, because in porphyria, there was a bad formation of the molecule of hemoglobin. But what if this is all a justification that the vampire was anemic and suffered from porphyria from a doctor's standpoint of view? Maybe we got vampire here, but is some rare disease.
There's definitely a folklore origin for vampires being nocturnal and not liking the sun or being active under it, but it's general consensus that them burning, exploding, or dying by it is a fabrication of modern fiction.
You guys talk about blood like some kind of magical fuel that if it would hold certain properties, it would run the body better. But the body can only run on one or two type of blood in it. And if you drink or eat blood, you just digest that, and it is not straight up running the body, but burning before giving energy to create more of the type of blood you can run on.
Well, if the folklore is right, only vampires that have died and risen from their graves after being cursed feed solely on blood. They're not human in any way anymore, so they don't need to feed on normal food as their physiology is completely vampiric.
The point is, vampires are as good as aliens, a different life form, either generated naturally or artificially by old times or by nature at whatever time in the past 2 million years of any Earth variant, since that implies even the possibility of time and dimension travel, or any world that was ever hardened from imagination to reality. It can be a lot of things. However, that is a different topic.
There are space alien vampires. They even made space alien vampire movies, and you know how they love to put real stuff in movies.
I was with my friends at a party. Everything was okay and boring for me because I cannot drink alcohol. I have stomach problems. Nevertheless, we had some fun, left the party early, and went to a friend's house to chill. After a couple of minutes, I heard some of his friends come in to join us. Several hours passed, and I wanted to leave for home because it was getting very late. Some friends of his decided to take me home in the car, and before we reached the car, we saw several men out in front of the car, many of whom looked drunk, but I wasn't expecting any kind of trouble. As I walked past the car to get to the back seat, waiting for the owner to let me in, a man approached from that group and told him to get inside the house because he was needed by someone. It appeared to me the owner knew this guy because he did exactly that, without opening the car or telling me anything. I just stood there for a couple of seconds, then decided to walk back in the house to see if he was still willing to take me home or if I should go on my own. I had my driver's license suspended due to an accident a few years ago. I went into the house and said goodbye again to some friends while I was thinking of my journey home, because the public transport at that hour didn't run, about 4 a.m. I live in Eastern Europe, by the way. I don't know if in the USA the public transport system differs, but at that same time a man who was outside apparently walked into the house with 2 more guys, and it caught my attention. He had medium brown, darkish hair, slim with loose clothes. Very common looking actually, but that wasn't the thing that caught my attention. When he entered the house, I just had a strong feeling coming from him that I cannot describe that well. He looked at me. He had dark brown glassy eyes. I didn't say anything, but then he started to move around, even the 2 guys that went with him, and that's when I realized his movements were so unnatural or weird. It seemed like he was going backward. His arms were behind his body as he moved. The feeling I had was not fear though. like you would be scared of the unknown, like ghosts, demons, the dark, a horror movie, etc. This was a feeling I had a few times when someone died or saw something very graphic and gore-related. I swear I could feel it in my brain. It was the same feeling I had when I watched someone years ago falling off the stairs with blood running from his ears. It was not fear, but like the brain rewiring itself somehow. He looked at me intensely, which seemed at that time a very long period, and I couldn't move. I now remember opening my mouth halfway and just staring back at him, eyes wide open and fixating my vision on him, but didn't want to make contact with his eyes. Subconsciously, I think I told myself not to look for some reason. He never spoke a word, and no one else engaged him. He went straight for the door after making these rounds inside the house, and for a second he stood under the door entrance and turned his head again to look at me. He was pale white, and in a way evoked the same feeling in me as before. He left. I tried to gather myself, trying to convince myself that there was nothing wrong. I left my friend's house for home. I forgot about the whole thing while outside. It was freezing. I was walking in the snow, feeling sleepy and tired until I saw him again near a closed travel agency building. He was ahead of me, leaning against the glass walls. He didn't seem to notice me, but I knew then that it was him. I switched sides on the sidewalk to get some distance and with one eye looked over in his direction. He noticed me halfway and smiled. I couldn't see his face better because of the snow and distance, but I noticed his mouth was deep red, almost bloody. I picked up the pace, worrying that he might follow, but he stood his ground. Shortly after, I was out of range and on my way home. I tend to smoke a lot. I had this irrational fear when I got home and lit up a cigarette with my window open that someone might come in. I was thinking of him specifically, though I live in an apartment on the 15th floor. Nothing happened, of course, and I went to sleep. While writing this, I remember vividly the same feeling I had when I encountered this man, and I can't shake it. Somehow I get a mental image and visualize this man as I did back then. Somehow not human and yet human enough not to be afraid in a way I would be of the deep supernatural. I guess only one word comes to my mind when I think of him. A sort of vampire, though strangely enough, it's not from any book of fiction or myth I know of. I keep sensing him like that. I don't know why. I could tell myself that this was nothing out of the ordinary, but the experience and the feelings I went through were anything but ordinary. I have to keep that in mind. I can't ignore them, and subconsciously I give them credence.
Over the holiday period, 3 days before New Year 2012, my girlfriends and I decided to explore Seattle's nightlife. I have lived in Seattle for the last 5 years, but have not really investigated the city's nightlife, much to my girlfriends' annoyance. My girlfriends are fully aware of this fact, and begrudgingly I went on the pub crawl. After hours of trudging through the cold night and visiting many bars, we finally discovered a bar in Belltown which was located down an alleyway. I don't know the name of the bar. It was dark and I wasn't attentive at this point. This was our final destination, and I was relieved. I was the designated driver, and I had stopped drinking several hours earlier, so I wasn't feeling the euphoria that was shared by my girlfriends. In fact, I was miserable. I remember the entryway to the bar had 2 stone steps. I stubbed my toe on one of them as I ascended the stairs, which is why I remember. The interior was dark. It was small, packed full of punters, and had a very sticky floor. We managed to push our way to the bar and ordered some drinks. We stood near the bar. The place was heaving. My girlfriends had already consumed the first lot of refreshments and they were drinking like a fish, so it was the best place for us to stand. I pushed my way to the bar a second time to get the girls more drinks. Whilst I was standing at the bar, I was flanked on the right by a group of men who were loud and crass, and to my left was a man probably 6 foot tall or so with dark short hair and wearing a grey t-shirt. I didn't pay much attention to anyone as my focus was to attract the bartender so I could order the drinks. The man on my left spoke to me, but I couldn't decipher what I heard. I turned to look at his face and his stare was quite piercing. I noticed he had really dark eyes, but then he was backlit so part of his face was cast in shadow. He then touched my shoulder and said something. At first I couldn't interpret what he was trying to say. There was too much noise, music blaring, punters talking and laughing. It just sounded like a roar until he touched my shoulder and the noise just drifted away, similar to when one inserts earplugs to reduce noise. At first I couldn't comprehend what happened. I think I was dazed for a minute or so, and then he started to speak again and I could hear him. He asked for my name and I provided my real name without thinking. Then he asked who my friends were. The chit-chat carried on for a couple of minutes and then he told me he was a vampire. I scoffed at the statement and then he showed me his teeth. His teeth were nice actually, bright and shiny, and he had slightly elongated canines. I didn't believe him. I thought the teeth were glued on and thought my girlfriends must have bribed him to poke fun at my skeptical nature. I asked him if he likes to roleplay as a vampire and became quite persistent in questioning. He was adamant he was a vampire and got frustrated, so I asked him to prove it. He said he could bite me to prove it, but I rejected that idea. I am not naive to think blood disorders can't be passed on through a bite. He mentioned he knew where I was from, which I thought was easy since I have a British accent, where I work and roughly where I live now. I was astounded when he clearly stated I was from the north of England, the northern coast, near Blackpool. Actually, I was born in Preston, Lancashire, which is 15 minutes from Blackpool. He stated I worked for an aerospace company and that I lived 40 minutes south of Seattle. He mentioned that I was married. The married part was obvious. I had my wedding rings on. And then he stated that I had a little girl. At this revelation, I was truly nervous. I didn't believe he was a vampire, but a stalker. He knew too much about me. I wondered how he knew I had a little girl. I was actually panicking at this stage. I quickly walked away and pushed my way back to my friends. I didn't turn around to look at him and quickly told my friends what occurred. We left the bar within minutes. We had to walk a little, and as we approached the car park, my friends noticed the vampire from the bar standing next to a bus shelter. I quickly ushered my friends into the car park and got out of Seattle as fast as I could drive, hoping he didn't get a chance to see the license plate number. Over the next couple of weeks, I was questioned a multitude of times by my friends and have been asked to inspect every single aspect of that night. The night in question, I was cold stone sober, so I know what I saw and heard. However, I am still dubious that he was a vampire, but I'm not sure what he was. I was definitely astonished that he knew so much about me. I can't explain how he knew so much. I am essentially a foreigner in this country and don't have much information spread everywhere as most US citizens. It is hard to track me unless you have access to immigration databases. Anyway, this is my weird story. You can interpret this tale how you wish. I, on the other hand, have learned to be more careful about the places I visit in the future.
I never get to share this story, and whenever I bring it up to my mother, she basically just dismisses me as crazy and or misremembering things, so here it goes. Be me, age 7 or 8. Parents often pay babysitters to watch me because they both had to work jobs. They pay this edgy goth teenager to watch me. I was a little piece of shit back then. Start goofing around with her, like calling her a vampire and stuff like that. She's mildly annoyed but doesn't really care, denying me the reaction that I want. Decide to scare her instead. Go into the basement to get some blankets and shit. Plan to pretend to be a ghost and jump scare her. I come out of the basement, look around. She's gone. Find out she's upstairs using the bathroom, so I wait outside the door with a white sheet over my head. My parents' bedroom is right next to the bathroom door, so I can see right into. See a pair of eyes staring at me from my parents' bedroom, glowing white. Shit my pants and run away, throwing my sheet off my head. Goth kid comes out of the bathroom. I yell at her to come down, so she does, and finds me hiding behind our living room couch. What is it, Anon? Tell her about the thing I saw in my parents' room. She calls bullshit and checks it out, says there's nothing there. I convince myself I was just seeing something. Still shitting myself though, so I blast SpongeBob as loud as I could to comfort myself. Goth girl tells me my folks are back, so I run to them and tell them what I saw. Dad says it was a reflection and that I'm overreacting, pays the goth kid, and she leaves. Get ready for bed and make my mom tuck me in because I've still got horrible chills. Go to sleep. Wake up in the middle of the night. Don't know what time it is, but I do know I'm dying of thirst. Creep downstairs to get a glass of water. I'm sweating really badly and don't know why. Go into the kitchen and open the fridge. Hear a strange noise from behind me that sounds like footsteps. Turn around. It's a silhouette of an animal or something standing behind the dining room table. It looks at me, same glowing eyes as before. Notice how they don't light up the room at all, they just glow. Shitting myself.jpg. Dropped my water glass, making it shatter everywhere, woke up my parents. My dad comes downstairs ready to whip my ass. Turn back, the animal is gone. Get grounded for a week for shattering a glass. To this day, I still have no idea what I saw. The more I try to remember it, the less details I can recall. I do remember thinking it might have been a goat or something. Either way, everyone I tell this story to doesn't believe me and thinks I might have just been sleepwalking and dreaming.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.